This all happened because on my way back from work, I got lost. A woman holding a vase standing in front of a slightly open door. Inside, some people were talking about searching for a person named Essen. She thought to herself, what did I just hear? And stepped back, but as she did, the vase broke into pieces. Hearing the sound, a voice came from inside asking, who's there? She thought, I've been caught. When she saw three men standing in front of her, she feared for her life. One of them was the Crown Prince's best friend, Terna Aguilera Oviedo, another was the Crown Prince's knight, known as Genius and Maine, and the third was the only heir of Apaneos, Adrian Briss Affinson and our protagonist. She was just a servant working for a princess. As she looked at the Crown Prince standing in front of her, she began to tremble. The prince, angry, asked, who are you? Nervously, she began to answer, I am from the palace, but he interrupted her, is that what I asked? I asked, who are you? She stuttered, I'm just a servant, your highness. He ran his fingers through his hair and said, forget it. Just die. He pulled out his sword, waving it in the air. She dropped to her knees in fear. Then his best friend grabbed her hand, stopping the prince. Terna shook his head and said, if someone dies here, it will raise suspicions. If you're going to kill her, you need to be careful. The prince made a sound of frustration, lowered his sword, and asked the girl, how much did you hear? And don't lie to me. The girl screamed, I heard that your highness's fiance is ran away. Pointing his sword at her, he said, is that all? The girl froze and nervously added, I also heard that your highness's fiance is actually a man. Hearing this, all three men fell silent for a moment. Then the crown prince spoke, nothing will come of this. You have to die, and began to raise his sword. Seeing this, the girl quickly fell to the ground, pleading, please spare my life. I'll do anything. After a brief moment of hesitation, the prince softened. He thought for a moment, then walked closer to her, inspecting her face, turning her head left and right. Standing up, he said, you'll do. At least your hair and eyes are similar. He looked at her face and said, we can make it work. We'll pass you off somehow. The girl blinked rapidly, and he continued, I think you can either stay quiet or just keep silent. In fact, stay silent and don't say anything. The girl hesitated and asked, what do you want me to do? With a devilish smile, he said, become my fiance. And just like that, I became the crown prince's fiance. The scene shifts, and a report is shown being discussed by the crown prince and his best friend, who are sitting at a table drinking tea. The report, which pertains to a female protagonist, is being analyzed. The best friend says, she's from a ruined noble family, and there's nothing suspicious about her. Her background seems clean. The crown prince, resting his head on his hand and scattering the reports on the table, thinks to himself, why do I even need to marry? I just want to kill all of them. Everything will end once I get the throne. I just need to hold on until then. He then asks his best friend, how is the search for Essen going? With a relaxed smile, the best friend replies, Diano is trying hard to find her. The crown prince then asks, and what are you doing here? Referring to the female protege. What happened to her training? The best friend replies, hey, give me a break. You always ask me so many questions. The protege says, go and train her now. Terna asks, but why? Can't we take our time? Adrian replies, no, do it now. Terna, with a face full of fake tears, says, you never let me rest. Adrian looks at him and says, you're in charge of making her work for me, then walks toward the door, opening it and saying, yes, your highness. My world changed in just one day. I was just a small servant, but suddenly I became the crown prince's fiance. Sitting on the sofa, with a blank mind, I wonder, where am I? Who am I? Suddenly, a voice from behind says, hello, little sister. I think to myself, why is this man suddenly calling me his little sister? He asks, you know I'm your older brother, right? Terna asks with a smile on his face. I remain silent and internally say, I'm sorry, but I don't want to know. After suddenly becoming the crown prince's fiance, I was taken to Lily Palace. Lily Palace is where the future crown princess resides while learning the ways of the imperial palace. That night, lying on the bed, she thinks, he told me to rest because my training starts tomorrow. The next morning, she wake up, still in the same position, and think, there's no way I could have slept. The scene shifts to the conference room, where the crown prince's fiance now has dark circles under her eyes due to lack of sleep. He barged in at the crack of dawn, sat me down, and said I had to learn the basics. Nervously, while sipping tea, she thinks, I'm still trying so hard to understand if this is really happening. Everyone is so calm, expect me. Then, Terna begins speaking, you probably already know this, but let me explain again to make things clear. First of all, I am Terna Aguilera Oviedo, and from today, you are Edine Cheval Levade Oviedo, the hidden daughter of the Oviedo family. Surprised, she asks, what? She starts thinking, I've heard about this before, about the youngest daughter of the Oviedo family who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. I always thought her sudden appearance was a bit odd, but I never knew there was such a reason behind it. If Essen hadn't run away, I wouldn't have to go through all of this. But if I had been caught and Essen hadn't run away, my death would have been certain. Essen, who was the crown prince's bodyguard, was also the person acting as the crown prince's fiance. The crown prince's beloved fiance was, in reality, a man. But why did they have to discuss this while I was standing there? Grabbing her head and continuing her thoughts, she thinks, I don't care if it was a man or a woman, just spare my life. At that moment, Terna says, I do feel sorry for you, being caught up in this mess with the crown prince. She replies, that's exactly what I was wondering. But no matter what, you have a lot to learn, and you need to remember it well if you want to stay alive. Because the ball is in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks? She asks in a lifeless, questioning tone. Exactly, Terna replies. And to make it a success, we will do whatever it takes. You must become the perfect fiancé, tirelessly preparing for this, because that is the only way you can survive. Looking into Terna's serious eyes and sweating nervously, she thinks about the crown prince. In her mind, she asks herself, can I survive this?